The golden towers of Etheresia reached toward the twin suns like fingers grasping for divine power. Today marked 500 years since the Valderan Empire began its reign across the galaxy. Every street corner displayed banners showing the proud elven symbol, a silver tree with roots that stretched to every conquered world. The celebration would last for 7 days, and beings from 1,000 worlds had come to witness elven might. Captain Lisa Hayes stood at her post in the orbital monitoring station, watching the festivities below through the massive viewing screens. Her human features looked tired after 20 years of service to the Empire. She had been just a child when the elves conquered her homeworld. Now she wore the gray uniform of Imperial support staff, monitoring space traffic around the capital. The elves had been kind enough, she supposed. They called humans a promising species that simply needed guidance. Most humans served in basic roles while the elves handled important matters like war and governance. Lisa had shown skill with communications technology, so they allowed her to work in space operations. It was better than the mining colonies where most humans ended up. Lady Aria Moonwhisper paced across the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dawn. Her silver hair flowed like liquid metal, and her violet eyes held the confidence of someone born to rule. As High Admiral of the Imperial Fleet, she commanded over 3,000 warships scattered across the galaxy. Today she wore her ceremonial armor, white and gold plates that sparkled with embedded gems. The celebration below was as much about displaying power as it was about honoring history. Aria paused at the main display showing fleet positions around Etheresia. Everything was perfect. The defensive formations looked beautiful and deadly. No force in the galaxy could challenge elven supremacy. They had crushed every rebellion, absorbed every useful technology, and brought order to chaos. The galaxy was better for their rule. On the planet's surface, Commander Zara Vex studied reports from the outer colonies. Her reptilian features showed no emotion as she read about minor unrest on farming worlds. The Karathi people had always been excellent soldiers once properly motivated. Zara had earned her position through 2 centuries of loyal service to the Empire. Her scaled green skin bore ritual scars that marked her rank among her people. The AIA reports were routine. A few protests here, some smuggling there, nothing the local garrisons could not handle. The Empire had learned to rule with just enough force to maintain order without destroying productivity. Happy workers produced more resources. Zara had helped design many of the policies that kept the outer world stable. Dr. Maya Singh bent over her research station in the Imperial Science Complex. Her dark hair was streaked with early gray from years of intense work. Like most human scientists, she had been assigned to study technology recovered from conquered civilizations. The Saksh elves preferred to let others do the detailed work while they focused on grand strategy. Maya had made several breakthroughs in energy weapon design, though the credit always went to her elven supervisors. She was analyzing data from a recent archaeological dig when her computer chimed with an alert. All research facilities were being ordered to prepare status reports for the celebration. The Empire loved to showcase its scientific achievements during major events. Maya sighed and began compiling her latest findings. The work was interesting, but she sometimes wondered what discoveries humans might make if they had the freedom to choose their own research projects. High above the planet, Lisa noticed something unusual on her sensors. A new contact had appeared, at the edge of the star system, moving inward at steady speed. She frowned and ran the signal through the identification database. Nothing matched. The ship design was completely unknown. Lisa opened a communication channel to the nearest patrol ship. Control to Patrol 7, we have an unidentified vessel entering the system. Please investigate. The elven captain's voice came back smooth and unconcerned. Acknowledged, Control. Probably another refugee ship looking for work during the celebration. We see them all the time. Lisa nodded but kept watching the contact. Something felt different about this one. The ship was too large to be a simple refugee vessel, and its energy signature was unlike anything in the Imperial database. She had seen thousands of ships over the years, from tiny courier vessels to massive cargo haulers. This one did not fit any known pattern. The unknown ship continued its approach, ignoring all communication attempts. Lisa tried every standard frequency and protocol. Nothing worked. The vessel simply flew toward Etheresia as if it owned the space around it. Its course would bring it directly through the heart of the Imperial Fleet Formation. Lady Aria received the alert while reviewing parade formations with her staff. She glanced at the tactical display showing the unknown contact and dismissed it with a wave. "Some traitor hoping to get attention during the celebration," she said to her aide. "Have a patrol escort them to the commercial docks." But something in the back of her mind nagged at her. The ship was moving with unusual confidence for a civilian vessel. Most merchants approached Imperial space with obvious caution, broadcasting identification codes constantly and requesting permission for every course change. This ship acted like it belonged here. Commander Zara was called to the command center as more reports came in about the mysterious vessel. She studied the sensor data with professional interest. The ship's design was crude by Imperial standards. All hard angles and functional surfaces. No artistic elements or decorative features. It looked like something built purely for war, though its weapon systems did not appear particularly advanced. "Analysis, Commander?" asked the duty officer. Zara tilted her head, a gesture that meant careful consideration among her people. "The design philosophy is unknown. Very practical. No wasted materials or effort spent on appearance. Whoever built, this prioritizes function over form." Dr. Maya was working late when the security alert reached her laboratory. All research staff were ordered to remain in their facilities until the unknown vessel was identified. She pulled up the sensor data on her secondary screen while continuing her work. The ship's energy patterns were fascinating. The power distribution was completely different from Imperial designs, more efficient in some ways, though it seemed to waste enormous amounts of energy on what looked like shield generation. As the night progressed, the unknown ship continued its steady approach. Lisa watched its progress with growing unease. She had called in every available sensor platform to scan the vessel. The results were confusing. The ship appeared to be approximately 2 kilometers long, built from unknown alloys, and powered by an energy source that defied easy classification. The ship finally reached the outer defensive perimeter just as the first sun began to rise over Etheresia. Automated defense platforms targeted the vessel and prepared to demand identification. The celebration below was about to begin in earnest. Billions of beings across the galaxy would be watching the displays of Imperial power and prosperity. Lady Aria stood on her bridge in full ceremonial dress, ready to lead the fleet demonstration that would cap off the opening ceremony. Commander Zara had taken position in the tactical center, monitoring all security reports. Dr. Maya was still in her laboratory, fascinated by the strange energy readings from the approaching ship. Captain Lisa remained at her post, a growing sense of dread building in her chest as she watched the unknown vessel ignore every attempt at communication. None of them realized that everything was about to change. The ship that looked so crude and simple carried technology that would shatter their understanding of what was possible. The celebration of 500 years of elven dominance was about to become something very different. The galaxy was about to learn that not every species could be conquered, and some had been preparing for this day much longer than anyone imagined. The unknown ship reached the middle defensive ring as the celebration ceremonies began on Etheresia. Lady Aria watched from her flagship as thousands of vessels formed perfect geometric patterns around the capital world. The display was meant to show the galaxy that Imperial power was absolute and beautiful. Every ship moved with precise timing, their hulls gleaming in the light of the twin suns. Captain Lisa kept her attention split between the ceremony and the mysterious vessel. The ship had been designated Contact 7 by the tracking computers. It continued moving toward the planet without any response to communication attempts. She had tried every known language and communication protocol in the Imperial database. The vessel simply ignored everything. "Control to all stations," Lisa announced over the command network. "Contact 7 is approaching the inner perimeter. All defense platforms are tracking but holding fire pending identification." Lady Aria heard the report through her command earpiece. She was annoyed that some random ship was disrupting the perfect choreography of the celebration. "Send a squadron to escort them away," she ordered. "I do not want anything interfering with today's events." Commander Zara reviewed the tactical situation from the planetary command center. The unknown ship was now clearly visible to every sensor in the system. Its design remained unlike anything in Imperial records. The hull appeared to be made from some kind of dark metal that absorbed sensor scans instead of reflecting them. Whatever civilization built this vessel had very different ideas about ship construction. "Commander," called one of her technicians, "the vessel is not responding to any standard identification requests. Should we consider it hostile?" Zara studied, the display showing Contact 7's steady approach. "Not yet. It has made no aggressive moves. Perhaps their communication systems are damaged or incompatible with our technology." Dr. Maya was trying to focus on her assigned work when another research alert appeared on her screen. The science division wanted analysis of the unknown ship's energy patterns. She pulled up the detailed sensor logs and immediately became fascinated. The power signature was completely wrong for any known propulsion system. The ship seemed to be generating far more energy than it should need for simple movement. The energy patterns reminded her of theoretical designs she had seen in ancient human technical databases. Before the conquest, Earth scientists had been working on some very advanced concepts. But those were just theories. No one had ever built anything like what these sensors were detecting. Contact 7 passed through the inner defensive perimeter without slowing down. The automated defense systems locked onto the vessel, but did not fire without direct authorization. Lady Aria was growing increasingly irritated with the situation. The celebration required her full attention, and this mystery ship was becoming a distraction. "Patrol Squadron 12, intercept Contact 7 and determine their intentions," she commanded. "Use whatever force is necessary to stop them from disrupting our ceremonies." Captain Lisa watched as 12 elven patrol ships moved to surround the unknown vessel. The sleek Imperial craft were works of art as much as weapons of war. Their silver hulls curved like sword blades, and their plasma cannons could reduce asteroids to dust. Surely any reasonable captain would surrender when faced with such overwhelming force, but Contact 7 did not slow down or change course. If anything, the ship seemed to accelerate slightly as the patrol squadron approached. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. No civilian vessel would behave this way when confronted by Imperial warships. This was either a ship full of crazy people or something much more dangerous. Commander Zara was receiving reports from observation posts throughout the system when the first communication from Contact 7 finally came through. Every receiving station in the Etheresia system picked up the same transmission simultaneously. The signal was incredibly powerful, cutting through all other communications like a knife. "This is Captain Amy Chen of the Earth Defense Force," said, a clear female voice speaking perfect Imperial standard. "You have 30 minutes to surrender all military forces and prepare for the liberation of this system. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." The command center fell silent. Zara stared at the communication display in disbelief. Earth Defense Force. She knew that name from historical records. Earth was the human home world that the Empire had supposedly conquered decades ago. But the conquest reports had described a primitive civilization with basic space technology. This ship was clearly far from primitive. Lady Aria heard the transmission on her flagship and felt her carefully controlled composure crack slightly. A human captain was demanding that the Valdoran Empire surrender. The idea was so absurd that she almost laughed. Humans were a client species under Imperial protection. They had no independent military forces, let alone ships capable of challenging elven vessels. "Communications, respond to that transmission," Aria ordered. "Inform Captain Chen that she is addressing the High Admiral of the Imperial Fleet. She will surrender her vessel immediately and submit to boarding for inspection." The response came back within seconds. "High Admiral, this is Captain Chen. I repeat, you have 30 minutes to surrender. I strongly advise you to use this time wisely." Dr. Maya was staring at her computer screen in shock. The voice in the transmission had spoken with an accent she recognized. North American English, specifically from the regions around the Great Lakes. She had studied enough Earth historical records to identify regional speech patterns. But how could someone from Earth be commanding a warship in Imperial space? Captain Lisa felt something she had not experienced in 20 years. Hope. The captain of Contact 7 was human, and she spoke with the confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed. Lisa had grown up hearing stories about Earth from older refugees, tales of a world where humans governed themselves and reached for the stars. She had always assumed those stories were just dreams of what might have been. Lady Aria decided that enough was enough. A single ship, no matter how unusual, could not threaten the combined might of the Imperial fleet. She would demonstrate proper respect for Elven authority by destroying this impudent vessel in full view of the galaxy. All ships, target contact. 7, she commanded. Full power to weapons. I want that ship reduced to scrap metal immediately. Over 200 Imperial warships turned their weapons toward the lone human vessel. Plasma cannons that could melt through battle armor began, charging to full power. Missile launchers loaded their most powerful warheads. The firepower aimed at Contact 7 could have destroyed a small moon. Commander Zara watched the tactical display with professional interest. The unknown ship was about to face the concentrated fire of a significant portion of the Imperial fleet. No single vessel could survive such an attack. Either Captain Chen was incredibly brave or completely insane. All ships, fire, Lady Arya ordered. The space around Contact 7 lit up like a new star as hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles converged on the human ship. The energy release was visible from the planet's surface, a brilliant flash that outshone both suns for several seconds. When the light faded, everyone expected to see nothing but expanding debris. Instead, Contact 7 continued on its original course, completely undamaged. The ship's hull had not even been scorched by the massive attack. Whatever technology protected the vessel was far beyond anything the Empire had ever encountered. Captain Lisa stared at her sensors in amazement. The readings showed that Contact 7 had absorbed the entire attack with what appeared to be some kind of energy shield system. The ship's power output had actually increased during the bombardment, as if it was using the incoming energy to strengthen its defenses. Lady Arya felt the first real fear she had experienced in centuries. Her fleet had just delivered enough firepower to destroy a battle station, and the human ship had not even noticed. This was impossible. Imperial weapons technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. No one had shields capable of absorbing that kind of punishment. All ships, full reverse, she ordered. Maintain maximum distance from Contact 7. But it was too late for caution. The human ship had finished whatever it was doing during the bombardment. Contact 7's weapons systems came online with a power signature that made the Imperial fleet's attack look like a child's fireworks display. Commander, Zara was receiving panicked reports from sensor stations throughout the system. The readings from Contact 7 were off every known scale. The ship was generating enough energy to power a small star. How was this possible? How had humans developed technology so far beyond Imperial capabilities? Dr. Maya was frantically searching through every database she could access, looking for any reference to Earth Defense Force vessels. The few records she found described basic chemical rockets and primitive nuclear weapons. Nothing that could explain what she was seeing through the laboratory windows. Contact 7 hung in space like a dark angel, radiating power that bent light around its hull. The 30 minutes Captain Chen had mentioned were almost up. Lady Arya realized with growing horror that the human captain had not been making an empty threat. This single ship really could challenge the entire Imperial fleet. But that was impossible. The galaxy belonged to the elves. They were destined to rule because they were superior to all other species. A bunch of primitive humans could not have developed technology that surpassed elven science. Contact 7's weapons began targeting individual Imperial ships with mechanical precision. The first beam struck the patrol vessel that had initially been sent to investigate. The ship simply vanished in a flash of light, converted to energy so quickly that there was no debris field. The message was clear. The humans were no longer asking for surrender. Lady Arya watched in horror as another Imperial patrol ship disappeared in a flash of brilliant light. Contact 7 was methodically destroying her vessels one at a time, each shot perfectly aimed and instantly lethal. The human ship moved through space like a predator, its dark hull seeming to absorb the light from explosions around it. All ships, attack pattern 7, Arya commanded, her voice steady despite the growing panic she felt inside. Surround the target and attack from all angles simultaneously. The remaining ships of her fleet moved to execute the order. Pattern 7 was designed to overwhelm any single target through coordinated fire from multiple directions. No ship could defend against attacks coming from every possible angle. It was a tactic that had broken the resistance of dozens of civilizations. Captain Lisa monitored the communications between Imperial ships as they repositioned around Contact 7. She could hear the fear creeping into the voices of elven captains who had never faced a real threat before. These were officers who had spent their careers suppressing rebellions and enforcing imperial law against vastly inferior opponents. None of them had ever encountered an enemy with superior technology. The Imperial fleet opened fire again, this time with better coordination. Hundreds of plasma bolts converged on Contact 7 from every direction. The space around the human ship became a storm of deadly energy that would have vaporized any known vessel. For a moment, the concentrated fire was so intense that sensors could not penetrate the energy storm. When the light faded, Contact 7 was still there, still undamaged, still moving toward Etheresia with the same steady confidence. But now something had changed. The ship's weapon systems were fully active, and power readings showed that it was preparing to respond with overwhelming force. Commander Zara received reports from observation posts throughout the system. Similar ships had appeared near 3 other major Imperial worlds. The vessels all had the same design as Contact 7, the same impossible energy signatures, and the same human crews. This was not a single rogue vessel. This was a coordinated attack on multiple Imperial strongholds. "Commander," called her communication officer, "we are receiving surrender demands from all 4 locations. The human ships are giving our forces the same 30-minute ultimatum." Zara felt her scales shift color, a sign of extreme stress among her people. 4 ships were simultaneously challenging the Empire at its strongest points. Either these humans had completely lost their sanity, or they possessed capabilities that made the Imperial fleet irrelevant. Given what Contact 7 had just demonstrated, she was beginning to suspect the latter. Dr. Maya was reviewing every piece of data about Earth that she could find in the research databases. Most of the information dated from the original conquest. Reports describing a world of primitive humans who had barely achieved basic spaceflight. But there were older files, records from the first contact missions that painted a very different picture. According to these early reports, Earth had been developing extremely advanced theoretical science. Human physicists had been working on concepts that elven scientists had dismissed as impossible. Faster-than-light communication, zero-point energy extraction, matter conversion technology. The conquest reports had assumed that these were just wild theories with no practical application. Contact 7 proved those assumptions wrong. The ship was using technology that the Empire had believed was purely theoretical. Somehow humans had turned impossible science into working weapons systems that made Imperial technology look like stone tools. Lady Arya was receiving damage reports from across her fleet when Contact 7 finally responded to the Imperial attack. A single beam of coherent energy struck the Imperial dreadnought Sovereign Will, the most powerful warship in the fleet. The massive vessel, which had served as the symbol of Imperial might for 2 centuries, was cut cleanly in half. The 2 sections of the dreadnought drifted apart, their internal systems sparking and dying. Emergency beacons activated as survival pods launched from both halves. The ship that had been considered unsinkable was now nothing but debris and desperate survivors. Contact 7 had destroyed it with what appeared to be casual effort. "Retreat," Arya whispered, then repeated the order louder. "All ships, full retreat. Fall back to secondary defensive positions." But Contact 7 was not interested in allowing an orderly withdrawal. The human ship accelerated toward the fleeing Imperial vessels, its weapon systems targeting multiple ships simultaneously. Beams of energy reached out across impossible distances, each one perfectly aimed at critical systems. Captain Lisa watched as ship after ship disappeared from her sensors. The Imperial fleet, which had seemed invincible just an hour ago, was being systematically destroyed by a single human vessel. The elves had ruled the galaxy through technological superiority, but now they faced an opponent whose technology made their own look ancient. The celebration on Etheresia had turned into chaos as word spread about the battle in orbit. Citizens who had gathered to watch displays of Imperial power were now witnessing the destruction of their fleet. Panic spread through the streets as people realized that their supposedly invincible protectors were being defeated by an enemy they had never heard of. Commander Zara was coordinating with her counterparts on other worlds as reports came in from all 4 attack sites. The pattern was the same everywhere. Human ships appearing without warning, demanding surrender, then demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority when challenged. The Empire was under attack by an enemy it had completely underestimated. "Commander," reported her aide, "we have confirmation that similar vessels have appeared at 17 additional Imperial installations. They are broadcasting the same surrender. Demands." Zara realized that this was not just an attack on a few major worlds. This was a coordinated assault on the entire Imperial infrastructure. The humans had somehow built a fleet large enough to challenge the Empire simultaneously across dozens of systems. How had they managed to do this without Imperial intelligence detecting any sign of preparation? Dr. Maya was frantically searching through archived communication logs when she found something that made her blood run cold. For the past 50 years, there had been intermittent signals detected at the edge of Imperial space. The signals were too faint and irregular to trace, dismissed as natural phenomena or equipment malfunctions. But looking at them now with fresh understanding, Maya realized they were probably human reconnaissance transmissions. The humans had been watching the Empire for decades. They had studied Imperial technology, mapped Imperial defenses, and identified every weakness in the system. This attack was not the desperate action of a primitive species. It was the carefully planned operation of a civilization that had spent generations preparing for war. Contact 7 had now destroyed over half of Lady Aria's fleet. The remaining ships were scattered across the system, their captains too terrified to continue fighting and too proud to surrender. Aria herself stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her life's work dissolve into flames and debris. "Hi, Admiral," called her communication officer. "Captain Chen is requesting to speak with you directly." Aria wanted to refuse, but she needed to understand what was happening. How had humans developed such advanced technology? Where had these ships come from? What did they want with the Empire? "Put her through," Aria said quietly. Captain Chen's image appeared on the main screen. She was a woman of middle years with graying hair and eyes that held no mercy. Her uniform was simple and functional, completely unlike the elaborate dress of Imperial officers. She looked like someone who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. "High Admiral Moonwhisper," Chen said with cold formality. "You have seen what our technology can do. Your fleet is destroyed and your planet is defenseless. I am prepared to offer terms for surrender." Aria struggled to maintain her composure. "What do you want, human?" "Justice," Chen replied. "For 500 years, your empire has enslaved entire civilizations. You have treated thinking beings as property and resources to be exploited. That ends now. You cannot expect me to surrender the entire empire to a handful of ships," Aria said, though her voice lacked conviction. Chen smiled, and the expression was not pleasant. "Hi, Admiral. We are not a handful of ships. We are the Earth Defense Force, and we have been preparing for this day since your empire first appeared in our galaxy. Look at your long-range sensors." Aria activated the deep space sensors and felt her heart stop. Contacts were appearing throughout Imperial space, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each one had the same energy signature as Contact 7. The humans had not sent a few ships to challenge the Empire. They had brought an entire fleet. "Impossible," Aria whispered. "The resources required to build such a force." "Earth has been preparing for 50 years, Chen explained. "We have built our ships in the deep void where your sensors could not detect them. We have studied your weaknesses and planned for every possible response. The age of Imperial rule is over." Commander Zara was receiving reports that confirmed her worst fears. Human ships were appearing at every major Imperial installation. Military bases, administrative centers, resource extraction facilities, all were facing the same overwhelming force. The Empire's communication networks were being systematically jammed or captured. Captain Lisa found herself thinking about stories her grandmother had told her about Earth. Tales of a world where humans governed themselves, where science was used to explore rather than conquer, where different species worked together instead of serving a single master race. She had always thought those stories were just dreams. Now it seemed they might have been memories of something that still existed. The battle for the Etheresia system was over. Contact 7 had destroyed most of the Imperial fleet and forced the surrender of the remaining ships. Similar victories were being reported from across the galaxy. The Valdoran Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 5 centuries, was collapsing in a matter of hours. Lady Arya stood on her bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she had believed in. The Empire was not destined to rule forever. The elves were not inherently superior to other species, and somewhere in the deep void, humanity had been building the tools necessary to prove both of those assumptions wrong. Contact 7 moved into orbit around Atheresia like a dark moon, its weapons trained on the planetary defense systems. Captain Amy Chen had given the Imperial forces one final chance to surrender, and the deadline was approaching fast. Below on the planet's surface, millions of beings watched the sky and wondered if their world was about to become a battlefield. Lady Arya stood in the ruins of her command center, surrounded by reports of defeat from across the galaxy. Ship after ship had fallen to the human attackers. Worlds that had been Imperial strongholds for centuries were now broadcasting human occupation codes. The impossible was happening before her eyes, and she could not understand how. "Hi, Admiral," her communication officer reported with a shaking voice. "Contact 7 is charging weapons. Energy readings are off our measurement scales." Arya looked at the tactical display, showing the human ship hanging above her world like a sword. She had always believed that elven technology was the pinnacle of galactic achievement. The idea that humans could surpass elven science had never occurred to her. Now that belief was crumbling along with everything else she had built her life. Around, Captain Lisa was monitoring communications from across the system when she heard something that made her heart race. Human voices, speaking in languages she had not heard in 20 years. The occupation forces were not just military personnel. They included civilians, scientists, doctors, teachers, people who had come to help rebuild what the Empire had destroyed. "This is Dr. Kate Rodriguez of the Earth Colonial Medical Service," came one transmission. "We are prepared to provide immediate humanitarian assistance to all freed populations. Medical supplies and personnel are standing by." Lisa felt tears running down her face as she listened to more voices. Engineers offering to repair damaged infrastructure. Scientists eager to share knowledge that had been suppressed under Imperial rule. Teachers ready to educate children in subjects the Empire had forbidden. These were not conquerors coming to replace one tyranny with another. These were liberators. Commander Zara was receiving similar reports from her staff. The human ships were not just destroying Imperial military forces. They were systematically dismantling the entire structure of Imperial control. Communication networks, administrative databases, transportation systems, all were being captured or neutralized with surgical precision. "Commander," reported her intelligence officer, "the humans appear to have detailed knowledge of our entire command structure. They are targeting specific individuals and facilities with impossible accuracy." Zara realized that the humans had been preparing for this operation for much longer than anyone had imagined. They knew exactly where every Imperial installation was located, who commanded each facility, and how to disable the Empire's ability to coordinate a response. This was not just military superiority. This was intelligence gathering on a scale that defied belief. Dr. Maya was watching the systematic dismantling of Imperial power when she received an encrypted message on her personal communication device. The sender was identified as Dr. Jennifer Liu, Earth Colonial Science Division. Maya stared at the message in shock. No one outside the Empire was supposed to have access to Imperial communication networks. "Dr. Singh," the message read, "we know about your work on energy weapons and your contributions to Imperial science. We also know that you have been forced to work against your will. Earth offers you the chance to continue your research in freedom, working on projects that benefit all sentient life rather than supporting tyranny." Maya realized that the humans had been monitoring Imperial activities much more closely than anyone suspected. They knew about individual researchers, their work, even their personal situations. How had Earth maintained such extensive surveillance without the Empire detecting it? Contact 7 demonstrated its true power as the deadline expired. Instead of destroying Etheresia's defenses, the ship simply turned them off. Every weapon, platform, every shield generator, every sensor array stopped functioning simultaneously. The planetary defense grid that had protected the Imperial capital for centuries was neutralized without a single shot being fired. Captain Lisa watched in amazement as similar reports came in from across the galaxy. Human ships were disabling Imperial technology remotely, shutting down weapons and defenses with techniques that seemed like magic. The technological gap between humans and elves was even larger than the orbital battle had suggested. Lady Aria felt the last of her pride crumble as reports reached her of complete system failures across the Imperial fleet. The humans were not just defeating Imperial forces. They were demonstrating that Imperial technology was so primitive that it could be controlled by external signals. Every weapon, every shield, every computer system that the Empire depended on was vulnerable to human interference. "All Imperial forces," came Captain Chen's voice over the communication network. "You have 3 minutes to evacuate all military installations and surrender your weapons. Anyone who complies will be treated as a prisoner of war under Galactic conventions. Anyone who resists will be considered a threat to civilian populations." Commander Zara made the decision that would define the rest of her life. She opened a channel to her troops throughout the system and gave the order to surrender. Her loyalty had been to the Empire, but the Empire was clearly finished. Continuing to fight would only result in unnecessary deaths among her soldiers. "All Kirathi forces, lay down weapons and prepare for surrender," she broadcast. "The war is over. We fought with honor, but we have been defeated by a superior force." Dr. Maya was still staring at the message from Earth when her laboratory door opened. Human soldiers in simple gray uniforms entered, their weapons lowered but ready. The lead soldier, a woman with sergeant stripes, approached Maya's workstation. "Dr. Singh," the sergeant said in perfect standard, "I am Sergeant Rose Martinez, Earth Colonial Security. You are not under arrest, but you are being relocated to a secure area while we process all Imperial research personnel. You will have the opportunity to speak with Earth scientists about your future." Maya nodded and gathered her personal belongings. As she was escorted from the laboratory, she saw other human researchers being led away by Earth personnel. None of them appeared to be treated harshly. If anything, the Earth soldiers seemed respectful and professional. Captain Lisa was surprised when her monitoring station was approached by a young human man in a blue uniform marked with Earth Colonial Administration insignia. He smiled and extended his hand in the traditional human greeting that she had almost forgotten. "Captain Hayes," he said, "I am Lieutenant Paul Kim, Earth Colonial Communications. We have been monitoring your work for several years. Your service record shows exceptional skill and dedication despite very difficult circumstances. Earth would like to offer you the opportunity to join our communications division." Lisa stared at the offered hand, hardly believing what she was hearing. After 20 years of service to the Empire, humans she had never met were offering her a chance to work for her own species again. She reached out and shook the lieutenant's hand, feeling a connection to her heritage that she had thought was lost forever. Lady Aria remained on her flagship as Earth personnel took control of Imperial installations throughout the system. She had been offered the chance to surrender and face trial for war crimes, or to resist and be destroyed along with her ship. The choice was not difficult. Death in battle would be meaningless when the cause was already lost. "This is High Admiral Moonwhisper to all Imperial forces," she broadcast on all frequencies. "I hereby surrender command of the Etheresia Defense Fleet to Earth Colonial Forces. All personnel will comply with occupation directives and cooperate with Earth authorities." The words felt like poison in her mouth, but they needed to be said. The Empire was finished, and continuing resistance would only increase the suffering of beings under Imperial protection. Whatever came next, it could not be worse than the chaos that would result from a prolonged war against an obviously superior enemy. Contact 7 was joined by dozens of other human ships as the occupation of Etheresia began in earnest. The vessels were all different sizes and configurations, suggesting a much more diverse technological base than the Empire had ever developed. Some appeared to be warships, others were clearly designed for transportation or construction. Earth had not just built a military force. They had prepared for the complete reconstruction of galactic civilization. Commander Zara was processed by Earth personnel with efficiency and respect. Her service record was reviewed, her knowledge of Imperial operations was documented, and she was offered the choice of repatriation to her homeworld or service with Earth colonial forces. The humans seemed more interested in her expertise than in punishing her for her loyalty to the Empire. Dr. Maya found herself in a conference room with 3 Earth scientists who were eager to discuss her research. They spoke of energy applications that could benefit civilian populations rather than military forces. projects that involved cooperation between species rather than the domination of one over others. For the first time in years, Maya felt excited about the possibilities that science could offer. Captain Lisa was given a tour of Contact 7's communication systems by Lieutenant Kim. The technology was decades ahead of anything the Empire had developed, but it was designed for coordination and cooperation rather than control and surveillance. Earth had built tools for liberation rather than oppression. The liberation of Etheresia was complete within 12 hours of Contact 7's arrival. Similar operations had succeeded across the galaxy with minimal resistance and surprisingly few casualties. The Valdoran Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 5 centuries, had been dismantled in less than a day by an enemy they had never understood. Lady Arya sat in a holding cell aboard an Earth transport ship, awaiting trial for her role in Imperial atrocities. She still could not comprehend how humans had developed such advanced technology without the Empire detecting any sign of their activities. The galaxy she had known was gone, replaced by something she could not yet understand. But perhaps, she thought as she watched Earth personnel working to restore damaged systems and care for displaced populations, the new galaxy might be better than the old one had ever been. 6 months after the fall of the Valdoran Empire, Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the observation deck of the Earth Colonial Administration Center on Etheresia. Through the massive windows, she could see the ongoing reconstruction of the capital city. The golden towers still reached toward the sky, but now they served a different purpose. Instead of displaying imperial power, they housed schools, hospitals, and research facilities open to all species. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Earth had not come as conquerors, seeking to replace one empire with another. They had arrived as liberators offering something the galaxy had not seen in centuries: true cooperation between species. The human approach to governance was based on federation rather than domination, with each world maintaining its own culture while participating in a larger community. Lisa wore the blue uniform of Earth Colonial Communications, her new rank insignia showing her promotion to commander. The work was similar to what she had done under the Empire, but the purpose was entirely different. Instead of monitoring populations for signs of rebellion, she helped coordinate relief efforts and facilitate communication between worlds rebuilding their societies. Dr. Maya Singh had established her new laboratory in the research complex that had replaced the Imperial Science Division. Her current project involved developing clean energy systems for worlds that had been stripped of resources by Imperial mining operations. Working alongside scientists from dozens of species, she was part of teams that shared knowledge freely, rather than hoarding it for military advantage. Dr. Singh called her research partner, a Kirathi engineer named Vex, who had volunteered to help with reconstruction efforts. The energy conversion efficiency is up another 12%. At this rate, we can have the first systems ready for deployment within 3 months. Maya smiled as she reviewed the data. Under the Empire, this kind of rapid progress would have been impossible. Imperial bureaucracy required lengthy approval processes and security reviews that slowed everything down. Earth's approach emphasized results over protocol, allowing scientists to focus on solving problems rather than navigating administrative barriers. Commander Zara Vex had indeed chosen to work with Earth colonial forces rather than return to her home world. Her knowledge of Imperial military doctrine and her experience with multi-species operations made her valuable in the transition period. She now served as a liaison officer, helping former Imperial troops adapt to new roles in planetary defense and peacekeeping. The irony was not lost on her that she was helping to dismantle the same system she had spent 2 centuries defending. But the more she learned about Earth's approach to governance, the more she realized how much damage the Empire had done. Species that had been forced into client relationships were now rediscovering their own cultures and technologies. Worlds that had been strip-mined for Imperial benefit were receiving aid to restore their ecosystems. Commander Vex called her aide, a young human officer named Lieutenant Sarah Jackson. We have confirmation that the last Imperial holdout stronghold has agreed to surrender terms. The transition is now complete in all sectors. Zara nodded with satisfaction. The process had taken longer than expected, but it had been accomplished with minimal violence. Most Imperial forces had chosen cooperation over resistance once they realized that Earth offered better conditions than continued fighting. Former Enemies were working together to build something better than what had come before. Captain Amy Chen of the Earth Defense Force had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the transition fleet responsible for maintaining order during the reconstruction period. Her flagship, Terra's Vengeance, remained in orbit around Etheresia as a symbol of Earth's commitment to protecting the new Federation from any resurgence of imperial ideology. Chen spent her days reviewing reports from across the galaxy as dozens of worlds worked to establish new governments based on cooperation rather than conquest. The process was not always smooth, but the results were encouraging. Species that had been enemies under imperial rule were learning to work together. Technologies that had been restricted to military applications were being adapted for civilian use. "Admiral," reported her intelligence officer, "we have completed analysis of the Imperial archives. The full extent of their crimes is even worse than we initially estimated. They enslaved over 300 species and stripped resources from more than 2,000 worlds." Chen reviewed the data with grim determination. The galaxy bore deep scars from 5 centuries of Imperial rule. Healing those wounds would take time, but Earth was committed to helping with the process. They had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, and they would spend however long was necessary to ensure that tyranny never again dominated galactic civilization. Dr. Maya received a message from Earth that filled her with excitement. The Colonial Science Division was offering her the opportunity to join an expedition to unexplored regions of the galaxy. Instead of studying conquered civilizations, she would be part of teams making first contact with new species and sharing knowledge on equal terms. The message also included an invitation to visit Earth itself, something she had dreamed of for 20 years. The home world of humanity had been hidden from imperial knowledge, protected by technology that made detection impossible. Now that the Empire was gone, Earth was opening its borders to visitors from across the galaxy. Lady Aria Moonwhisper sat in her cell aboard the prison transport ship that would take her to Earth for trial. The journey would take several weeks, giving her time to review the evidence against her and prepare her defense. She faced charges of war crimes and crimes against sentient life, accusations that carried severe penalties under galactic law. But as she read through the testimony of beings who had suffered under imperial rule, Aria began to understand the true extent of the damage she had helped cause. The Empire had presented itself as bringing order and civilization to primitive worlds. The reality was that they had destroyed thriving cultures and enslaved entire populations for the benefit of elven society. For the first time in her long life, Aria felt genuine shame for her actions. She had believed in elven superiority so completely that she had never questioned whether their rule was just. Now, faced with evidence of the suffering that belief had caused, she realized how wrong she had been. Captain Lisa stood in the communication center watching data streams from across the galaxy. Each transmission brought news of progress in the reconstruction efforts. Worlds that had been mining colonies were developing their own industries. Species that had been client races were establishing independent governments. The network of cooperation that Earth had envisioned was becoming reality. A priority message arrived from the Outer Rim territories, where exploration teams were making first contact with civilizations that had hidden from imperial expansion. These species had developed in isolation, creating unique technologies and cultures that would enrich the growing galactic community. Unlike the Empire's approach of conquest and assimilation, Earth sought to learn from and cooperate with new civilizations. "Commander Hayes," called Lieutenant Kim, who had become her deputy in the Communications Division, "we are receiving a request for technical assistance from the Andromedan refugees. They want help establishing communication networks with their scattered colonies." Lisa smiled as she prepared to coordinate the assistance mission. The Andromedans were among the species that had fled imperial expansion centuries ago, establishing hidden colonies in distant star systems. Now they were ready to rejoin galactic civilization under Earth's protection. Each success like this proved that the sacrifice had been worthwhile. Commander Zara received orders for her next assignment, leading a joint task force to explore abandoned imperial research facilities. Many of these installations contained dangerous weapons or experimental technologies that needed to be secured or destroyed. The work required cooperation between former enemies who now shared a common goal of preventing future tyranny. Her team included humans, elves, Kirathi, and representatives from a dozen other species. Working together, they were dismantling the infrastructure of oppression piece by piece. Weapons designed for conquest were being converted to tools for construction. Research that had focused on control was being redirected toward liberation. Dr. Maya packed her belongings as she prepared to transfer to the Earth expedition ship Discovery. Her new assignment would take her to regions of the galaxy that had never been explored by any known civilization. Instead of analyzing conquered technologies, she would be studying natural phenomena and helping to establish peaceful contact with whatever civilizations they might encounter. The work represented everything she had dreamed of during her years of forced service to the Empire. Science for exploration rather than exploitation. Knowledge shared freely rather than hoarded for military advantage. Cooperation between species rather than domination by one over all others. Admiral Chen reviewed the final reports from the transition period as she prepared to return Terra's vengeance to Earth. The immediate crisis was over. Former Imperial worlds had established stable governments based on Federation principles. Military forces had been converted to peacekeeping and exploration roles. The galaxy was ready to begin the next phase of its development. The ship that had once been seen as an instrument of conquest was now returning home as a symbol of liberation. Earth had achieved something that no previous galactic power had managed: the creation of a truly cooperative civilization based on mutual respect rather than force. Captain Lisa received notification of her next assignment as she prepared to leave Etheresia. Earth Colonial Communications was establishing a new deep space monitoring network to facilitate contact with civilizations beyond the galactic rim. She would be part of teams making first contact with species that existed beyond the boundaries of known space. As she packed her belongings, Lisa reflected on how much had changed since that day 6 months ago, when Contact 7 had appeared in Imperial space. The galaxy she had known was gone, replaced by something better than anyone had dared to imagine. Humanity had not just defeated the Valdoran Empire. They had offered an alternative that proved cooperation was more powerful than conquest. Commander Zara stood on the bridge of her new ship, the Federation vessel Unity, as it prepared to depart for the outer territories. Her crew included volunteers from every major species in the galaxy, all working together toward common goals. The ship itself was a symbol of what Earth had accomplished. Beings who had once been enemies now served side by side in the cause of galactic peace. Dr. Maya took one last look at Etheresia through the viewport of the Discovery as the expedition ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. The world that had once been the heart of an oppressive empire was now the center of a growing federation based on freedom and cooperation. Whatever they found in the unexplored regions ahead, they would approach it with respect rather than conquest. Lady Arya faced her trial with dignity, accepting responsibility for her role in Imperial crimes while working to provide information that would help heal the damage. Her knowledge of Imperial operations was valuable in locating hidden weapons caches and secret research facilities. Perhaps through cooperation, she could partially atone for centuries of oppression. The galaxy that emerged from the fall of the Valdoran Empire was not perfect, but it offered something that had been missing for 5 centuries: hope. Species that had been enslaved were free to develop their own destinies. Worlds that had been exploited were receiving aid to rebuild. Technologies that had been used for war were being converted to tools for peace. And somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, Earth's monitoring stations continued their watch, ready to defend this new civilization against any threat that might emerge. Humanity had learned that freedom required constant vigilance, but they had also proven that cooperation was stronger than conquest, and that even the mightiest empire could fall when faced with the determination of those who refused to surrender their hope for a better future.